Okay guys, so here's your instructional video on dividing fractions. And before we go through this, I want to talk a little bit about multiplying so that you can see the difference. So just simple multiplication, 2 times 3 equals 6, correct? Well, because of the property of, or the multiplication property of commutative, you can flip these factors around and still get the same product. So 3 times 2 equals 6, right? And you can do the same thing when you multiply fractions. So if I multiply 1/2 times 1/3, I multiply the numerators across 1, I multiply the denominators across 6. So 1/2 times 1/3 equals 1/6. Well, if I flip these factors around, 1/3 times 1/2, I still get 1/6, right? Well, with division, it's a little different. So think of just simple division. 8 divided by 4, we all know is 2, right? If I have 8 candy bars and I want to divide it amongst 4 people, they each get 2 candy bars. Well, if I flip these two numbers around, 4 divided by 8, I no longer get 2. If I have 4 candy bars and I want to divide them amongst 8 people, each person gets 4/8 or 1/2 of a candy bar, right? So 2 is much different than 1/2. And it's because in this problem right here, 8 is your dividend. It's the number you are dividing by. And 4 is your divisor. It's how many groups you're putting 8 into. And in this problem down here, 4 is your dividend. So that's the number I'm dividing, and I'm dividing it by the divisor, 8. So I'm putting it into 8 groups. So each group is a half, okay? So when you're dividing fractions, you really have to pay attention to the divisor and the dividend, which one's which. But before we talk about that, let's talk about unit fractions. So unit means 1. So if I have a fraction or a whole that is broken up into fourths, one of them is 1/4, right? So a unit fraction is 1 out of the whole. So if I have 2/4, what is the unit fraction of that? It's 1/4 plus 1/4. Okay, so a unit fraction is just 1 out of the whole. So that's what you're going to be using when you do your interactive notebook today, is you're just going to be dividing by unit fractions, or dividing a whole number by a unit fraction, or the unit fraction is going to be divided by a whole number. So let's talk about the word divisor. So divisor is the number you are dividing by. So it's how many equal groups you're trying to put the dividend into. By. So it's usually the number of equal groups, or the number you're trying to take your other number and put into. So the dividend is the number you are dividing. So it's usually what you start with. So when you take a look at a simple division problem like 8 divided by 4 equals 2, 8 is the dividend, it's the number you are dividing. 4 is the divisor, it's the number you are dividing by. And 2 would be considered your quotient. All right, so let's take a look at dividing by a unit fraction. So this is a whole number, this is your dividend, and I'm dividing by a fraction, my divisor. So when you think about this, or when you talk about this, you can say, how many times can 1/2 go into 4? Or how many times can I take 4 and break it into 1/2? So if you were to draw it out in your division bracket, it would look like this: 4 divided by 1/2, right? So you're trying to see how many times can 1/2 fit into 4, or how many times can I take 4 and divide it by 1/2, right? So if you think of that as a word problem, I have 4 candy bars, and I want to break that into half. Break those candy bars into halves. So how many pieces of candy bar would I have, right? So let's draw that out. So if I have 4 candy bars and I break each one into half, how many halves do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? So the answer is 8. Now, to do this mathematically, you got to pay really close attention now. You're going to use something called the reciprocal. And the reciprocal of any number is just the opposite of it. So if I have 1/2, the reciprocal is 2/1. Okay, if I have 4, now 4 written as a fraction is 4/1, right? So the reciprocal is 1/4, correct? So that's what you're going to use when you divide fractions. So I'm going to leave my dividend the same. My first number is always going to stay the same. So 4 is going to just be 4, right? Now I'm going to change my division sign to a multiplication sign, and I'm going to flip this fraction around to its reciprocal, 2/1. Now if I multiply across, 4 times 2 equals 8/1. So my answer is 8. All right, let's take a look at this one. So when you think about division, and if you were to kind of talk this one out, it's saying 1/2 divided by 4. How many times can I break 1/2 into 4 pieces? Or what would my answer be if I took 1/2 and broke it into 4 pieces? So it would look like this if you drew your bracket. So 1/2 divided by 4, right? Now that looks pretty hard. I'm not quite sure how to do that. So let's draw out a picture. So let's say this is one whole candy bar, right? And I only have a half left. So I want to split this half of a candy bar amongst 4 people. So I'm going to split it up into 4 pieces. Well, I'm going to pretend like this one that I already ate is still there. Okay. So this is my 1/2 right here. This is my other 1/2 of the whole, correct? So this is the 1/2 that I have, and I'm splitting it amongst 4 people. So how much is this right here? Well, this is 1 out of, what would the whole be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is 1/8, okay? So 1/2 divided by 4 equals 1/8. So to do that mathematically, you keep your dividend the same. The first number stays the same. 1/2, you change your division sign into a multiplication sign, and now 4, written as a fraction, is 4/1. Well, I'm going to take the reciprocal of that, I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to make it into 1/4. Now I multiply across, 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 4 is 8. So your answer is 1/8. So 1/2 broken into 4 pieces equals 1/8. I hope you found that helpful.